8 years of love, memories, and promises, and she left me on our wedding day. In front of everyone, in the middle of the aisle, she turned around and walked away. No explanation, no second chances. I stood there, broken, humiliated, and wondering, how did this happen? If love lasts forever, why did ours end like this? John and Irina's love story wasn't just a relationship. It was a journey. They met in college, both young and full of dreams. Irina was lively and full of energy, the kind of person who could light up a room with just a smile. John was quieter, more reserved, but steady and dependable. Together, they balanced each other perfectly. From the moment they met, their connection was undeniable. They spent hours talking about life, about their dreams, about their future. Every late-night conversation, every stolen kiss, every moment was special. John had never loved anyone the way he loved Irina. And she made him believe in forever. Their love grew through the years. John got his first job, and Irina was there to celebrate with him, waiting outside the office with a homemade cake. When Irina lost her father, John was there, holding her through the endless nights of grief. When John was struggling, feeling lost in life, Irina was the one who reminded him of his worth. 8 years. That's how long they had been together. 8 years of love, laughter, and promises of a future together. When John proposed, it wasn't just a question. It was a fulfillment of everything they had ever dreamed of. It was a perfect night, a rooftop dinner under the stars. Just the two of them. Irina had tears in her eyes as she said yes. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "I can't wait to spend my life with you." John believed her. The months leading up to the wedding were exciting. They picked out flowers, tasted cakes, and argued over silly details. Irina wanted a live band. John preferred a DJ. She won. He didn't mind. He just wanted to see her happy. But looking back, there were signs. Small ones. Moments where Irina seemed distant, lost in thought. Sometimes, she would stare at her engagement ring in silence. Sometimes, she would avoid conversations about the future. John noticed, but he brushed it off. Cold feet were normal, right? Every bride gets nervous before the big day. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. The wedding day. The venue was breathtaking. A beautiful hall decorated with soft lights, white roses, and elegant golden chairs. Family and friends gathered, all waiting for the moment when John and Irina would say, "I do." John stood at the altar, hands slightly sweaty, but his heart full of excitement. This was it, the moment he had dreamed of. The music started, the doors opened, and there she was, Irina. She looked stunning. Her white gown flowed gracefully, her veil trailing behind her like a dream. But something was off. Her eyes, instead of happiness, there was hesitation, a flicker of something unreadable. She took slow steps toward him. Each one felt heavy. John smiled at her, his heart beating faster. He was ready to say the vows, ready to promise his life to her. But then she stopped, right in the middle of the aisle. The music kept playing, but the guests began to murmur in confusion. John's smile faltered. "Irina," he called softly. She blinked, her lips slightly parted. Then her hands started shaking. And then she did the unthinkable. She shook her head. I can't do this." Silence. John's breath caught in his throat. His fingers curled into fists, his heart pounding. Everyone was watching. "What?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Irina's eyes welled up with tears. She looked around the room. The hundreds of guests, her family, his family. She took a step back, then another. "I'm sorry," she choked out. I changed my heart." And before John or anyone could stop her, she turned around and walked away. Gasps filled the room. John stood frozen. One moment, he was about to marry the love of his life. The next, she was walking out of his life forever. His mother rushed to his side, whispering his name in concern. His best friend put a hand on his shoulder. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Did that just happen?" John felt like he couldn't breathe. The love of his life had just abandoned him. At the altar, in front of everyone. Aftermath. John didn't remember much after that. He barely noticed as guests slowly left, whispering amongst themselves. He barely heard his mother trying to comfort him, his friends offering words of support. All he could hear was Irina's voice. "I changed my heart." That night, he sat alone in what was supposed to be their apartment. He stared at the half-packed wedding gifts, the beautiful invitations, the photos of them on the walls. His phone was filled with messages, friends asking if he was okay, family expressing their shock. But none of those messages mattered, because there was only one person he wanted to hear from, Irina. He called her. No answer. He texted her. No reply. Days passed, then a week, then a month. Finally, one day, he got a message. "I'm sorry, John. Please don't hate me. I just wasn't sure anymore." That was it. No explanation. No closure. John stared at the message, his hands trembling. He wanted to scream, to ask her why, to demand an answer. But deep down, he knew he would never get one. Irina had moved on. She left town, started a new life. People said she looked happy. And John? He was still picking up the pieces of a love that wasn't meant to last. Because sometimes, the hardest part isn't losing someone. It's knowing they chose to leave you, and you